Hello, everybody. I am Volker Friedrich, the founder and managing partner of GBP International, a global management and consulting company with a focus on Asia Pacific. Today, I have the pleasure to have a live talk with Dr. Stefan Tetzlaff, and he is an expert on international supply chains. He has been working with a company in India. The company is Godrej in Mumbai. He has done research work there. And today he is a fellow researcher at the university here in Berlin. And his topic is international affairs, especially Europe, Asia Pacific. And today we would like to talk a little bit about the present discussion we are seeing in the headlines, especially after the new administration in the United States took over, the US-China trade conflict, so to say. I don't like the word US trade war. That's a bit too rough for me. And everybody is asking me the question, do you think the policies of the US against or with China will change under the new Biden administration? Stefan, very warm welcome. And I would like to give that question to you as an intro opening question. What is your take on the present and future position of the US towards China, especially? Because this was the overruling topic, so to say, in the last 2-3 years of the Trump administration.
Thanks for having me, Volker. Really a pleasure to be here. I doubt that there's going to be a major change in the way that US perceives and acts upon China. But at the same time, there's a change in the words that are spoken, in the words that are used. You already hear that the Biden administration is much more cautious in putting out statements, in going about in international affairs. They seem to be preparing talks in the background with the European member states and the politicians of the EU. And so we will see something coming up in the coming months, but there's not yet the large war words that are not being used right now. But at the same time, they will continue to have a technological conflict, and this plays out in different realms. So one example recently is that Taiwan Semiconductor Company and TSMC and Samsung have announced that they are going to invest a lot of US dollars into US manufacturing. I think they are going to build 2 separate production sites in the US. So that's sort of this international quest for finances, for investment, and for trade routes that's going to continue.
Yeah. Stefan, you are an expert in, let's say, international supply chain, and you have analyzed a lot of these global supply chains. And not only because of the COVID crisis, we have seen a lot of discussion about, is this the end of globalization? Every country, especially when the crisis broke out, wanted to manufacture their own mask, their own gloves, their own equipment, because nobody liked to be depending on other countries. And that was really escalating to a certain degree. So I like to summarize this question. Do you see the end of globalization, or is this after COVID time a new beginning where we need to see new structures in supply chain, new sustainable checkpoints that these supply chains are not being misused?
Yep. Quite an interesting point. I think it's a changing phase of globalization. And we are not yet sure if we're going to continue the word globalization under these circumstances, but it's a new phase. And this new phase is defined at the same time by new trade and investment agreements, like we saw the EU-China investment agreement, like we saw RCEP.
RCEP, I was going to say, exactly.
Yeah, that is a new part of a new phase of globalization, that regional trade and investment treaties are signed. And so picking up on the question about the US, if the US is intelligent, they will also try to maneuver their interests towards different trade agreements with the European Union, but with also countries in the Pacific. So the other side, you have a broadening out. You have countries are remaining open, and some are even opening even more. So China, for example, is now more open than it was 5-6 years ago because of the strategy of dual circulation. They want to promote both. They want to promote internal consumption and attract foreign direct investment. So China is also, in a way, one could argue, is more open than it was several years ago. At the same time, all countries increasingly think about strategic autonomy. They want to make sure that whatever their populations need, the products they use, especially the products in the sector that are security sensitive, that are of utmost importance, the equipment, medical equipment, for example. So they want to make sure that all these equipments are available to them in a sufficient quantity.
Yeah.
So we will see in the next 10, 15, 20 years, we will see an increased set of policies that drive strategic autonomy while also being open to foreign direct investment.
And especially now in the, let's say, the development, the production and the logistics of the vaccination business, so to say, I think we see a renewed globalization effort. You know, it has been researched and developed in 3-4 different countries, maybe even more. And the production is probably all over the place under certain license agreements. So I also a firm believer that, say, good and healthy globalization is going to continue. Of course, there have been, let's say, misusages, and some people just took it too far. So there has to be a realignment of globalization, and that we need to see more sustainability, more ethical business behavior, and all these topics. But they are not in the limelight at the moment. We have to acknowledge that. Yeah.
And in fact, I think now we have 4 or 5 regions, major regions, which produce a vaccine. There's a big competition going on, in a way, between all those different systems in vaccine today, but there's got to be other products where this competition will definitely emerge.
Yeah. I'd like to come back to your expertise on India, especially. And just a few minutes ago, you mentioned this regional cooperation agreement, RCEP, in Asia Pacific, which is representing 1/3 of the global population. And one thing struck me is the fact that India was originally part of the discussion, but then they decided to pull out and not sign the agreement. That raises an eyebrow here or there. So what is the reason for that? Is it just, let's say, a protectionism of India to shelter certain industries like agricultural, for instance, or light equipment manufacturing, where they are strongly competing with places like China? Or do they have any other strategic reason not to join the RCEP? What is your take on that?
Well, it is very striking that they, in fact, pulled out, and it's not quite explainable because the Indian state, the Indian government, Indian politicians do attract a lot of Japanese investment. For example, they have done so for many decades, and they welcome it. And Japanese investments are thriving at the moment, partly also in competition with China. So India is attracting production from China and Japanese production from China. The Japanese government gives Japanese companies money to relocate, for example, to India. So I would say it was wrong for India to pull out, and they should not have done this.
Yeah, but I think the door is still open, you know, I mean, it's a living process, and it's very dynamic, and things will change over time. So the door is not closed completely.
I think the fact that the pandemic arrived, and of course the conflict between China and India, the border conflict, that was also a big reason. And now, if you observe Indian media, the Indian media and the Indian public is very averse to Chinese products, to Chinese apps, for example. They have all been plugged, just like in the US. So TikTok, you can't use anymore. That also has contributed to India not signing RCEP.
Yeah. Okay, so we will going to continue to observe India very carefully. Maybe we will ask an Indian expert in our next session for discussion. But I'd
That's
like
me.
to, yeah.
But, so there's one point I want to add. there was the India and the EU had free trade discussions in between 2007 and 2013, but they were stopped. The EU statement is for lack of ambition. The EU says, for lack of ambition, we did not pursue the EU-India free trade agreement. But
it's the same with EU-ASEAN. You know, they have stopped or hibernated that, and then in the meantime they started to sign with Vietnam and Singapore individually. So it's a bit messy and difficult to analyze and structure. Yeah.
But very important to pick up for policymakers, I think, in the future as we go along.
Yeah, very true. Stefan, I would like to draw a little bit our focus of discussion towards our, let's say, the typical German industrial company. And we see the headlines like we discussed in the first 10, 15 minutes now, EU, US, China, India. But let's break it down. What does it all mean for, let's say, a manufacturing company with a plant in Germany and another plant in China, another plant in India, and maybe they think of opening a third factory in Indonesia? How do all these strategic issues, which no doubt are very important, what does it mean for these individual companies? What should they think? What should they consider? Where are their walk-away points? You know, when should they be more careful or even more aggressive? How do we translate this political strategy discussion into a business operation?
Yeah, good point. So that it seems now with the EU-China investment agreement having been, or the draft having been signed, there's going to be more discussion about this. The investment security for German and European companies in China seems to be secured. So they can remain for now. They can remain and continue to produce. And China is important. If you want to sell in China, you have to produce in China. That's the main idea why you need to be in China. If you want to have a production site and a place to manufacture, to bring it back to Europe, say manufacture parts of automobiles, then there could be destinations of production which are closer to Europe and which make more sense to sort of to produce and to have.
We call it nearshoring. You know, you go to Eastern Europe or Southern Europe, even North Africa.
So there's now a discussion about certain products, goods that could be produced much closer in Europe. For example, medical equipment. Those could be brought to Eastern Europe, for example. That's one destination. But there could be. So the idea is that you think production and market together. And if we look at China and India, the Indian market has not been developed as the Chinese has, but there's an early beginning now. We see the US, many US companies who are investing in India. Facebook and Amazon are only two, but there's a growth of investments from the US in India, and that is going to continue. Now, what German companies need to ask themselves is, do they want to open up shop in India as a new place of sales, as a new place, as a new market? Because the medium and long run is that the technological systems across the world are going to divide more and more between each other. There's going to be more and more division. So the internet, and the internet is the first example, but that's going to go on. The internet is already divided between China and the US, or systems which are controlled by those two large powers. So the question is, where does Europe fall? But the question is, where do other markets fall? And India looks like it's going to be part of the US technological system. So German companies, if they are interested in India, if they want to invest, if they want to produce in India, they need to think about the systems, the strategic systems behind that sort of define the market, that define the country.
Yeah. Well, we all know, and you and me, we have been living and working in Mumbai for some time. So we all know it's a long way to catch up by India. And it's for surely an attractive, it's a huge market, but it's also not an easy market. Like any foreign market where you start your business, and you have to have certain, I would say, ambition combined with skill set of your people you are going to send to India. in order to survive and make the investment successful and sustainable. So we have seen many companies also who came back from India and said, well, never again I will go to India. But that is also true in other countries. So it's never an easy path. And if it were easy, everybody would do it. Let's put it this way. Stefan, let's talk a little bit more about foreign direct investments in general. Last week, there was a headline that China is now the largest target for foreign direct investment, more than USA, more than in Europe. And we all know, we are economists, we know the level and the trend of foreign direct investment is also indicating the quality of your investment location. So is it fair to say that China, from a global perspective, is the most attractive place to put your money at the moment? And what does it say about Europe not reaching that level anymore?
So definitely for certain sectors, for certain industrial sectors or certain technologies, China is the market that is starting to define standards, that is starting to define how products look and feel. So that's the equipment development is very strong in China, and that has to do with AI, with artificial intelligence, with many other aspects which have an impact on how products are developed and used. So the investment that goes to China is a signifier of the quality of the market, but it is also showing how many companies trust in the technological capabilities of the market. There was always, in the discussion about made in Germany, Chinese companies used to say about, or foreign companies used to say about Germany, we want to be in the German market because that's the toughest to be in. The customers are the toughest. They tell us how to develop our products. But this seems to be changing now. And China seems to be becoming the defining market for user experience and for technological development. So that's a major issue. Yeah. And the EU would do well, and Germany would do well to develop policies that go in a similar direction. Of course, the education system, and the applied education in industry, that should be a major focus, as we see in BioNTech. The fact that BioNTech came up has to do with the German education system and the fact how research is used in industry.
Yeah, I agree with you. And if we read the headlines in the magazines the last weeks and months, I can see a little bit of a trend that many people, even the previous Chancellor Gerhard Schröder, he even published a book, basically warning, hey, the competitiveness of made in Germany, don't take it for granted. We are in a global competition. And if we lay back and we are just saying, okay, we have been the champions anyway, this position is unchallenged, we are going to have a very, let's say, cruel awakening in a couple of years from now. And in many sectors, we also have that in our projects. We see new rising competitors, whether it's machinery and engineering, whether it's software, whether it's education. Do you also see from your network that the positioning of the German champions is challenged and is under threat, or do you see that they do as well as in the past?
Yeah, there's of course a larger discussion about competition, about how Chinese products sort of compete with the specific set of products that Germany can offer. And that is true. That is not going to go away. That has been around for the past decades, as you are well aware. In a way, the idea of copycats continues, while also the products in China, from China, for example, themselves are gaining in quality. So I think there was recently an association of the Association of German Machinery Manufacturers, VDMA. They made a study with Bertelsmann Foundation and were saying that German industry really needs to be careful about what is going to happen, because Chinese competitors are going to be even more competitive as they are now, and they would pick up speed in competition. So that's going to be a scenario that they will have to face for sure.
Yeah,
but that's part of the market economy. You will not be able to sort of rearrange or to impact the scenario. You can't have legislation. You can't keep yourself off and not allow other countries to invest.
So will it be survival of the fittest in the medium to long term, or do we need to, let's say, put in some structures and cross-check and balances that this is not going, let's say, out of control, so to say, and that in, I don't know, 10, 20 years, we don't even have no more textile manufacturing companies here, but also no more machinery manufacturing companies, and everything is done somewhere else.
So there's now, among economists, there's an increased discussion about the role of the state in making enterprise successful. Sort of, as in the state sets the parameters as for incubating, for corporations to incubate, and from then on they can move into the market. BioNTech might be an example because that was also partly supported by the German state. We see the question of solar panel manufacture was one of the big issues that the German government decided to proactively support. We see a new issue coming up now in the question of hydrogen production and of green steel. That's going to be a technology which is very important for Germany as a standalone, for now at least, as a standalone product. So what you need to do is make sure that the technology is good enough and can last long enough for businesses and the state to redevelop something new, because hydrogen production and green steel is also going to be something that China will be interested in.
Of course.
So there's a cycle in which those new inventions are going to be profitable, and then they are being used and redeveloped by others, and then you of course need to redevelop them yourselves. So that's
yeah. I mean, it's
you can see this as part of a competition. You can also see this as part of economic manufacture, of making things possible. If we look at the internet, the equipment that we use from home, none of this would have been possible without what they call the East Asian miracle in the 90s. The fact that many of these companies started producing stuff that we do not want or cannot produce any longer. So they had economies of scale to produce what we are all using today, often to the detriment for the environment, for example. So that's not we can't say just China is a competitor. We are all using products that are made in China.
Yeah, I agree with you. And like you say, it's a very long and old, so to say, discussion in the economic research faculties. To what extent should the state intervene, not only by setting the rules, but also deciding in which area the research money is going to flow. And every critical observer says, how on earth should the politician know which technology to support or to finance? And just leave it to the free market. The smartest minds will find out, and only where we see demand. So it's a long discussion, and we could possibly have a separate discussion about it in another round. So one last question I would like to say, following on the Chinese investment in Europe, and we have seen a lot of discussion. KUKA is the most prominent case in Germany, where suddenly we saw, let's say, a sensitivity on the political side that we are not opening our doors too wide, to sensitive areas. What is the present scenario there? Are, let's say, Asian investors welcome in Germany, or do they even want to come to Germany now because everything is under a little bit of distress and uneasiness at the moment, or do they focus on their home market, which is huge anyway, and they have lots of business and homework to do there anyway? Why on earth should they add another basket of problems by investing in Germany?
There was recently a discussion I followed which sort of addressed this question exactly, and what I listened to was, what I heard was that Chinese investment in Germany in Europe will not increase now after the investment comprehensive agreement on investment between EU and China. It's going to be more from Europe to China, and that has to do with different aspects, possibly. of course, there's now areas which are strategically controlled by the German government, which they would not like to be invested into by Chinese or any other companies. At the same time, the KUKA was, I think, the highest point that Chinese investors could get. Now, what more high technology is there in Germany for China to acquire or to invest into? It's already reached a stage where this wouldn't make so much sense. They can invest now for other reasons. For example, Huawei is...
Yeah, you can say China, they're already flying to the back of the moon. They have the latest 6G technology. Why do they need Germany, other than probably some smart people, they are buying away from the universities.
Yeah, there's a point of investment now for China, which is in a way goodwill investment. So Huawei now recently decided to have a manufacturing site in France, east of Paris, I think. And they want to define a management board with European members so that in a way the public is also not too much concerned about Chinese technology investment here in Europe. So that's going to be a possible way of investment where they want to have production sites here to cater to, in a way, security concerns. That could be a possible trajectory, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we have that in some discussion when it comes to this topic. Should China be more concerned about their actions and their reputation? And the example you just mentioned is going a little bit into, okay, we have to work on our reputation. And we also have to have some good news of what China is doing. And it's not black and white, and there are always gray areas. And it depends sometimes who you ask, what answer you will get, obviously. And we will see this discussion going on for the next couple of years for sure. So with this, I would like to come to an end to our discussion, Stefan. Thank you very much. It was very, very wide, very interesting. You have raised a few subjects which are not on the table every day. And I think this is owed to your experience, to your research you are doing. You have also published articles and papers. So I would encourage our viewers to Google your name. You will find Stefan on LinkedIn as well. Same you do for us, GBP International. My name is Volker Friedrich, and thank you very much again to Stefan. Enjoyed the discussion. Have a good day, and bye-bye to our viewers. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Have a good day.